Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham Tillawi. In this hour, ladies and gentlemen, we will be joined with Anisa AlFatah. She is the chairman of the National Association of Muslim American Women. The reason we go on to talk with Anisa tonight is she is filing her organization, the National Association of Muslim American Women. They're filing with the Attorney General complaints against some organizations, mainly the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, and other Jewish organizations that they feel that these organizations have actually stepped over the line and maybe they are controlling more than just controlling our politicians. They're also controlling our lives. And what it boils down to, and I'm reading from the information that the National Association of Muslim American Women put out. They put out a press release, and it says the United States citizens and women of faith and conscience, the National Association of Muslim American Women recognizes and works to uphold and protect the constitutional rights of every American. We believe that the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights are the pillars of freedom and true liberty in the United States, and that they are indispensable and should be interpreted, used, and protected as intended and explained by our country's founders. We do not believe that slander, libel, defamation, perjury, seditious speech, or speech that is intended to undermine the equal rights and equal protection under the law of any United States citizen is protected by the First Amendment. The organization complained to the Department of Justice calling for an investigation of the Jewish lobby is not an attempt to chill or to remove the right to free speech of Jewish Americans or anyone else. It's an attempt to end a historic campaign by certain organizations and people of misinformation and hate-mongering against Muslims, Arabs, and other Americans who are targeted by these groups and slandered and defamed as anti-Semites, or worse, terrorists, or potential terrorists, if they utilize their rights to free speech to criticize Israel, question aspects of the Holocaust, or to give an opinion about the United States-Israel relationship that is not favorable to Israel, or that is in support of Palestinian rights, or that calls into question the behavior or speech of any Jewish personality or person. The organization, as it's the NAMAW, which is the National Association of Muslim American Women. Again, complaint is an effort that is aimed at leveling the political playing field in the United States so that all Americans, rich, poor, Jewish, and non-Jewish, can participate freely, fairly, and equally in the political process, including debates and discussions on any topic, including topics pertaining to the Jewish history, religion, and culture, and also Israel and Palestine. It is intended to protect the rights of every American to formulate and express a political or religious opinion, make and express their religious and or political choices, traditions, cultures, etc., without fear of reprisal from these organizations and people and their international network of facilitators. I believe we do have Anisa with us now. Anisa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you for having me, Hesham.
Tell me at first, what I have done, I introduced your organization, and I've read the first few paragraphs of the press release that you put out. But tell our viewers, what is the National Association for Muslim American Women is, and what do you all do?
Okay, the National Association of Muslim American Women began in 1989 as the National Association of Muslim Women. We began in Newark, New Jersey. We were located at the Branford Mosque. And basically what we were just a group of Muslim women who kind of organized ourselves as a self-help group, meaning that what we did was we found ways to fulfill the needs of Muslim families that we felt that the mosque, providing services that we felt that the mosque just weren't, providing, particularly for women who were not married and women who were raising children alone. As a result of that, we kind of evolved into a social service organization. We had the Food for Families program where we worked in the D.C. area with the Capital Area Food Bank, providing food for families of all faiths, not only Muslim families. We did the Back to School program where we provided gently used clothing, school supplies for families who weren't able to afford, back to school clothing and school supplies for their children. So we evolved somewhat from a self-help program to a social service program. And then after we got involved in the United Nations Beijing conference and attempt to address issues that were raised in their draft platform for action, we became the National Association of Muslim American Women. And we felt that adding the word American was important, particularly when dealing with the United Nations and with women's organizations from so many different parts of the world. We wanted people to understand very clearly that our perspective were the perspectives of Muslim women, but Muslim women who are coming from the United States. And also because we wanted our Muslim sisters overseas to understand that we were not trying to speak necessarily for them, but we wanted to add our voice and speak with them. And so we added the distinction, American women. Since that time, we have kind of evolved further into a political action committee. Each year we offer a political endorsement. We throw our voices and our support behind various bills that we think are beneficial to American families and children. We consider ourselves a pro-family and a pro-life organization.
Okay. So what took you from serving and taking care of women and children to fighting the ADL?
Well, first of all, let me make clear, we don't consider ourselves fighting the ADL. What we have done is we have filed a complaint with the Department of Justice asking them to consider. We submitted a 5-page complaint supported by nearly 100 or more pages of supporting documentation. And we have asked the Department of Justice to look at our complaint and the documentation we provided, seeking to ascertain if, in fact, the type of activity that we believe is taking place is actually taking place.
Tell me, like what? What are you talking about? Tell me some of these activities.
What we believe is happening essentially is this, is that certain organizations have gotten together and decided that in an effort to protect what it considers its special interest, namely Israel, that it will take action to silence any dissenting voice in respect to that dialogue or that debate, and that in the process of doing that, that they have used some techniques that we think are illegal. And one of those techniques is slandering and defaming people with titles like terrorist or potential terrorist or anti-Semite. We think that the use of these terms in order to chill the civil rights of other Americans is wrong. In the law, and I'm not a lawyer, let me make that clear, but I have studied the law, and I have read a lot about defamation, libel, and these types of things, slander. And in some states, they have a category of words that they call fighting words. These fighting words are words that create so much anger and animosity in people that they are hurtful, and they usually lead to some kind of bad result. These are the kind of words that when people use them to describe one another, that they are usually considered to be defaming or slandering or libeling a person. I don't know whether presently in any state in the United States, anti-Semite or terrorist or potential terrorist has been added in that category. But I think the way that we have seen these words used politically here in the United States, that they would meet the definition of fighting words. We see the word anti-Semite being used to describe people simply because they express a political opinion that may not be favorable to Israel, that may be pro-Palestinian, that may call into question something that Jewish people do. You know, you can be called an anti-Semite. Now, people would say, well, you know, that's not defaming if you are an anti-Semite, and then that's the whole problem. How do you prove that when a person says something that they are actually saying that because they are an anti-Semite? You cannot. Just like if someone says the N-word, you know, no one can say that that person said that because they were motivated by hate. But what we can say is that when you use that term, you create and invoke an environment then that is very hurtful and that can also lead to things that are not positive things, not for the individuals involved in the exchange of those words and not for the society generally. The same with terrorists and potential terrorists. When people have not committed a terrorist act, when they have not been found guilty or convicted of a terrorist act, then it's wrong for people to label people that way, particularly based on their race or their religion or even because of their political opinion. And unfortunately, we see these particular organizations doing a lot of that. So our filing the complaint, first of all, was to say to the Department of Justice that this has been going on for a very long time. And I think that everyone who sees how it has impacted the Muslim community in the United States is aware of the fact that it's wrong. It's morally wrong. And now what we're asking the Department of Justice to do is to also say that it is legally wrong, that it is defaming, that it is slanderous, that it is liable to use these terms to describe people simply because you disagree with their personal opinion or even their political opinion.
Now, Anisa, do you think Alberto Gonzalez is really going to tackle this one?
Well, I don't know whether he will or not. I know that he is the Attorney General. He's not the head of the Civil Rights Criminal Division of the Department of Justice. So I don't even know if this would ever even come before him. What I am hoping is that our Department of Justice is able to take this question, because civil rights is one of their areas, and that they will be able to lend their expertise to an examination and an investigation that will determine for us whether we have reached a point in the national debate where these words, you know, have reached the level that they are too hurtful to be used irresponsibly and casually. And just like we have protections for everyone in society equally to be saved from certain other types of words that we have categorized as fighting words, then we can also now include these words so that if they're used, they must be used responsibly, supported by some kind of fact, and not used simply to hurt and defame or to incite, you know.
Now, to your knowledge, do we have any words that are protected by law that you can't call someone something? Do we have anything like that?
Well, I don't know if we have any specific words where someone says, oh, you can't call a person that. But I believe that generally, and I may be wrong, but this is my belief, that generally there are words, say, if you were to say something to me publicly, like if I was to write an article and then you were to rebut my article and say, you're an anti-Semite, that can be defaming to me. Because with this term, anti-Semite, there are so many other ramifications. You can call someone an anti-Semite in our society. It can affect their job. They may not be able to get hired anywhere. They may not feel safe any longer, considering some of the tactics that these groups have used against people.
I agree with you, and I'll tell you why I agree with you on that, because I have the ADL, even though I call myself, I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm a Semite myself, so there's no way I could have been anti-me. And but they have me listed. As a matter of fact, my name is the only Arabic and Muslim name is on their website, along with others who have summed up or lumped up as being anti-Semites and extremists, even though on this show so many times we tell people we're not anti-Jewish. We have a lot of Jewish friends. As Muslims, as a matter of fact, and you know this, we are to respect the people of the book, which is the Jews and the Christians. But you could not be a Muslim if you hate people because of their religion, and especially Judaism and Christianity. But they do have me listed on their website as an anti-Semite, and it did affect my whole life. A lot of people, some of the guests that I invite, they even though there's probably about 50,000 entries on the internet, good entries about me on the internet, but then they come across this ADL entry and they say, oh, the ADL is watching you, and it's like it's becoming more of imprisonment for me. And definitely, like you said, it will affect my career. It will affect my future. Having that or being labeled with that word, anti-Semites, and so I agree with you that something needs to be done, because you cannot just go around throwing these labels, knowing that these labels are going to hurt. That there should be a difference. And you tell me, what is that line between freedom of speech and between slander and defaming? What is that line?
Well, the law has drawn this line case by case, and I think you have to show that you were of some standing that, this would hurt you. Secondly, that it's not true, and that you were damaged somehow, by the use of that word. But my point is this, is that we also need to have some way to show that a person has no reason to use this word unless they can prove it. A person can't get angry at an individual and decide that I'm going to put their name on this list and they're going to be black marked against them as an anti-Semite because I don't like them. I don't like something that they, said, and then they attribute a motive, to you and literally begin to destroy your life because, they don't like what you said. This absolutely should be intolerable in the United States, because every citizen in the United States has a right to a political opinion, has the right to express that opinion, has the right to select a religion, has the right to express that religion, and to express a religious opinion.
Now,
and when people use these terms, they use them politically to chill these free speech rights, because they know that anyone who says something that they don't like is going to be tagged an anti-Semite, which makes the price of your free speech so high that you simply won't use it. People will gag themselves. No one will have to gag you and tell you, shut up, don't talk, because the price is so high, you will literally gag yourself. This is wrong.
Now tell me, what is it about that word? How do people understand the meaning of anti-Semitism? When someone says that such and such is an anti-Semite, what does that meaning have to individual people? Do you know individuals?
Well, I think in the U.S. society and probably in the world, I'll just limit my observations to the United States since that's where we are and that's where we live, that in the United States when someone is tagged an anti-Semite, it means that this is a person, who is like the people who carried out the Holocaust, that they have something more than just, a dislike for a person because of something they said or something they did. This means that they hate this person's race, and that because of that, they hate this person. It's a much more serious type of hatred that it symbolizes than what we simply would call as like a dislike or disagreement between two people. To be an anti-Semite, because anti-Semitism is the emotion or the feeling or attitude that was blamed for the Holocaust.
Okay. Semitism, it refers to a group of languages, a Semitic languages, mm-hmm. and Jewish people, which the majority of them who exist today in the world, were not of a Semitic stock, so to speak. Mm-hmm. How did that become, even though the majority of Semitic people who are living today in the world, they're not even Jewish. Most of them are Arabs and Muslims and Christians, and there are definitely Jews who are Semitic, but the majority, they are not. How did this word become, it means if you're anti-Semitic, then you're anti-Jewish, even though Semitic does not necessarily mean Jewish?
Well, I think this was something that was contrived by various Zionist organizations as a way to skewer the debate and the critique of Zionism. And what they did was they basically said that anyone who dares to offer a criticism or a critique, of Zionism or Jewish supremacism or nationalism, then we will brand them an anti-Semite. And I know Theodore Herzl, he wrote a lot about this word anti-Semite and how it had been planted in the lexicon in Europe and in the United States, and the purpose for that. And one of the primary purposes is that it would be used in order to chill speech, meaning that people would be so afraid of carrying that label and that tag that they simply would avoid any type of criticism, critique, or anything that had to do with things related to Judaism or Zionism or Israel. And they have succeeded in doing that because there are many people, and they are not hateful people, they are not racist people, they are people who feel that there are things that are going wrong, and I think that everyone on the planet, whether you're pro-Palestinian or pro-Israeli, looks at the conflict there and can see that there are a tremendous number of things that are going wrong. But many people will not speak out and be honest about that situation because they don't want to be tagged an anti-Semite. So it's for those reasons that I say that the use of this word has reached the point where we need to include it among those words that are considered fighting words, because when someone is tagged with that, it is defaming. And it is defaming to the degree that it impacts and creates damage. It prevents people from getting jobs. It causes people to be ostracized in the society. It is a very, it's a very damning term.
Do you see more and more cases of this since 9/11? Like, has it increased, or is it the same level before 9/11 and after?
Well, I don't know. I've never read any studies or looked at any numbers that would cause me to say that, its use has increased since 9/11 or decreased. But in respect to these terms, terrorist and potential terrorist, that are now used to describe a person's political view, and I think everyone has seen this especially on these cable talk shows or in some of the, the newspapers, you'll see that someone has an opinion that is against Israel.
Anisa, unfortunately, it's not just cable. Now we're going to have ABC. They have in this guy Beck. I think he's probably worse than cable. I don't know if they had hired him yet or not. John Beck.
Yeah, Glenn Beck, I think his name is.
Who?
Is his name Glenn Beck?
Oh, Glenn, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes. Used to be on CNN.
He was with, he's with CNN, but ABC was thinking of hiring him for Good Morning America.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And actually, there was a petition out there to have people call ABC and tell them, this guy is a racist and he is not to be on such a good program, I don't know, good program, but on a popular program like Good Morning America. Now, have you heard anything from the Attorney General's office?
From the Department of Justice? No, we haven't heard anything yet, and we didn't expect to hear anything right away. As I said earlier, we sent our complaint along with a good amount of supporting documentation. So I'm not expecting, and I'm hoping that we don't get anything too speedily, because I would like for them to take our complaint very seriously.
Okay. Now, we know...
Consider it seriously.
Okay. Unless you know something else that we don't know, you know what the response is going to be. So what is your next step if the Department of Justice comes back and say, you know what, we don't think there is enough merit to your case, so we're just not going to do anything about it? I applaud you for what you're doing, because to me what you have done is what Jimmy Carter has done, started a debate about the Israel-Palestinian issue, and I think you're starting a debate about this anti-Semitism, which definitely it needs to be debated of what it means, and people should be responsible enough to use a term like this. So I applaud you for this, but if the Department of Justice comes back and says we can't do much about it, what is your next step?
Well, if the Department of Justice comes back to us and says that we don't have any reason to believe that this is like an organized campaign to deny or to deprive Muslims and Arabs of their civil rights or to chill, their free speech, then what we will do is we will take it to the courts, and we have some cases lined up that we can file, and then we will try to get decisions out of the courts. We have defamation cases. We have some other types of cases that we would be willing to file, and allow it to go to the court and allow the courts, the judiciary, to decide whether or not these words rise to the level of hate speech, whether they rise to the level of slander and defamation, and whether or not the suffering that people are experiencing is really a type of damage that they can file a claim for and be compensated for.
Okay. Anisa, stay with me. We're going to take a quick break, and we will continue this after the break, so we'll be back in a couple of moments. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're speaking with Anisa AlFatah with the National Association of Muslim American Women about a complaint that her group had filed with the Department of Justice, and I'm just going to read a couple of lines from the complaint. It says, "We believe that the Jewish lobby in the United States has used its resources and influence to chill, deprive, and violate the First Amendment rights of other Americans in an attempt to dominate the political discourse in the United States on issues related to the Palestine-Israel conflict." Anisa, resources and influence, what are you talking about? What resources and what influence?
Well, I don't think there's any secret. Anybody who read the paper that came out on AIPAC, and we used that kind of as a source of information to kind of help us to understand how the Jewish lobby, and I call it Jewish lobby because that's a term that it is, everyone knows it.
Oh, you're even afraid to say Jewish lobby, huh?
Huh?
You're even afraid to say the word.
No. I received an email today, and I've received a ton of emails since the word started to get out that we filed the complaint. And I received an email from a gentleman who is very supportive of what we are doing. And he said to me, "Is it possible that you could use the word Zionist lobby rather than Jewish lobby, because I am a member of a group of Jews who are trying very hard to make this distinction between Zionism and Judaism, and to create a place where real Jewish people who are devotional Jews can come out from under this whole stereotype and all of these negative connotations, associated with this term Jewish lobby. So I sympathize with him, because that's the exact same thing that Muslims are trying to do, to get out from under this stigma of, terrorist and potential terrorist. So in deference to him, I want to make it clear that when we say Jewish lobby, we're using the popular term, but we know very well that it is not representative of the Jewish faith or of all Jewish people. So it's kind of late at this stage in the game maybe for us to use the word Zionist, because then people would think that maybe we were talking about other organizations. So we are talking about those organizations that have been identified as the so-called Jewish lobby. But at any rate, we know that they have formidable resources, that they do lots of fundraising, that they do lots of contributing to campaigns of various politicians, that they have lots of influence. And that's what we're talking about, basically.
Well, I agree. And just to add to what you're saying is, if Jews out there don't like these people doing this stuff in their names, then they need to stand up and say something about it. Don't do it in our names. Because when a poll was taken during the Lebanese conflict with Israel, it was 85% of Jews in the United States who sided up with the line of AIPAC and JINSA and the other Jewish organizations such as the ADL. So there is a problem there for Jews who don't want their name to be used. They need to stand up and put pressure on these people. And I agree with you. It's a very small group of people, very influential people who are using who are in this lobby. So if these Jews don't want it to be used, then stand up and liberate the name from these people usage this way. I'll tell you what, Anisa, stay with me. We'll go on to the phones. We have people waiting to talk to you. We'll go with Bonnie on line 1. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Yes, I was calling because I thought that this reminded me very much of Joe McCarthyism, McCarthy era in the 50s, when they blacklisted people and labeled them wrongly, and it went to before the Congress, and they blacklisted people that they wanted out of power, and labeled them communist, and this was a major Red Scare thing, they called it. And I saw when Jimmy Carter came out with his book, which everyone thought was controversial, but actually he was just giving some facts, and he had been friends to both sides and had dealt with both sides, and his facts related to the Geneva Convention and also the United Nations resolutions, and he was very clear, and he was attacked just mercilessly the next few days by the press, by the Jewish lobby and all those organizations, and I really dislike that they put a bad reputation on Jewish people. And it really ought to be emphasized that it's a select group of very corrupt leadership and evil leadership, actually. And I think that that's what they ought to be doing. And I'm probably going to get on a blacklist for this, too. But I think he was so right to come out and say what had happened. And he was an ex-president, so if he can't get away with it, how are we?
Exactly. Thank you, Bonnie. You have a question?
Well, I wanted to know how she could approach that Gonzalez group in there when they are so concentrated with Jewish leadership there. The aides that went into the 9/11 Commission report from the Justice Department had come from the Justice Department, and they were very much pro-Israel type persons from what I read, and I just think that you're kind of going to be banging your head against the wall there, and if Gonzalez is replacing judges right now, who are leaving. He's circumventing going to Congress for approval. So if he's going to put in judges, I don't know how you're going to get through this, but I think you just have to keep making your case publicly.
Very good. Thank you, Bonnie. Anisa?
Well, I think she's absolutely right. I agree with, most of everything that she said, except I want to, again, caution that just because a person is Jewish doesn't necessarily mean that they are of the attitude and behavior of these people that we have filed a complaint against. So to say, well, they're, going to have Jewish people, more Jewish people in the Department of Justice or more Jewish people in the executive offices or the Congress, this is not necessarily our problem. Our problem seems to be that we have people in these organizations who feel very threatened by the free speech rights of other Americans, and that they have organized and take steps to deny other Americans our constitutional right to free speech, to free political association, to fundraising, and to all of those things that the Supreme Court has declared over and over again are parts of our free speech. I also agree with her that there has been a lot of witch hunting and McCarthyism associated or utilized as part of these tactics.
Okay.
What do we do about it? I think that in the beginning we have to do what we're doing now. We have to begin to talk about it. The more people understand and learn that this is not something that is against Jewish people, that it is not something against the Jewish faith, that it really is a challenge to our government and our institutions to uphold the Constitution for every citizen, to ensure that every citizen's rights to free speech, to political expression and participation are protected and upheld. They owe us this. Everyone that takes an office, a public office, an elected office, they are sworn to uphold and protect that Constitution. Well, we're calling upon them to do that. So I think that it will be very hard for them to escape a public demand that they uphold the Constitution for every citizen and that they protect us some way, either through legislation or some way from groups who will abuse their free speech in order to hurt other Americans and deprive us of our constitutional rights. I think that's an argument that we can make. I think it's an argument that we can prove has been taking place, that this goes far beyond simple criticism or disagreement or dislike, that these people are using terms to define people who disagree with them politically that are hurtful and damaging. And this is what we want to address, and this is what we want our government to address. And they have an obligation, something that they can't step away from. It's not a matter of their legal interpretation. It is a matter of what the Constitution says, that we have these rights, and anyone who tries to deny or deprive us of these rights or who chills our rights by making the use of our rights so painful that we abandon, our rights, then these things are wrong. And in case after case, we find that the courts rule that these things are defaming, slanderous, that they are wrong, and in some instances, they do actually deprive citizens of rights.
Okay. Anisa, also you have written in the complaint, we also believe that the Jewish lobby has acted to create an environment in the United States that is hostile to Muslims, Arabs, and others, including white nationalists. How did this Jewish lobby create this hostile environment?
Well, I'm glad that you raised that question. I have a person, he writes to me, he emails me occasionally after reading a copy of our complaint, and he defines and identifies himself as a white nationalist. And he writes about the white nationalist movement in the United States as a movement that's in exile, a group of people who have stopped speaking out or saying anything about anything because they have been so tarnished, they have been so defamed in the United States, even though they believe they bring legitimate ideas to the public arena that could be debated among all Americans if we weren't faced with these situations where if anyone opens their mouth, they're automatically tagged with something that silences them, it defames them, and then causes them to suffer damages. In one email he wrote to me, he said, if I were to speak out, I am afraid of the kinds of things that would happen to me and my family and the kinds of things that would be said about me and how it would affect my family. Now, who can imagine in the United States of America that we have people who are literally afraid, to present their ideas into the public arena, afraid to write, to be published, afraid to express a political opinion, because this lobby is so brutal in the way that it uses these terms, anti-Semite and terrorist supporter and potential terrorist, that people are simply quiet, and that allows them then to dominate the political arena and to dominate the discourse, and this is wrong, and it should not be tolerated in the United States. So I mentioned white nationalists because I want people to understand that Muslims and Arabs are not the only groups in the United States who are being forced into exile within our own country, where we cannot voice our political opinions, our religious opinions, where the price to speak and to exercise and enjoy our rights has been made so high by these groups that lots of people are surrendering them.
What kind of response are you getting from the media out there? Are you getting any coverage from mainstream or so-called mainstream media?
No, absolutely none. And, the interesting thing about this type of thing is that you never can undertake it expecting to get much support or much coverage. I'm surprised by the number of people like your show. We did Lewis News program last Friday. I did a talk radio show that comes out of Connecticut that's supposed to air tomorrow. So there's been lots of interest among community groups and, organizations like your own. But from the mainstream media, absolutely not. And,
well, I tell you what.
We know why.
I tell you what. Cindy Sheehan had her debut over on this show.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wonderful.
And
Wonderful.
Practically no one knew who Cindy Sheehan was before she came on the show, and all of a sudden she became famous. And she doesn't deny that. I mean, she's a good friend of mine, and she does not deny that. Of course, we became friends after. Now, what? Okay. The battle is huge, and people are, as a matter of fact, the people we had in 2001, 2002, the numbers are dwindling as the policy in the United States changes. As you know, right now, these military courts can actually, it does apply to American citizens, and all they have to do is he's a potential terrorist or a enemy combatant, even though a United States citizen, and take him to these military courts. So the number of people who are willing to stand up and take an action like this is really dwindling.
Well, and that's exactly why we have to do something now, because we have a Constitution that says you can't do that. You cannot arrest people in the United States because of their political opinion.
Did you hear what George Bush said about that Constitution?
Well, I heard what they said. He said, I'll never believe that a president of the United States would make a statement like that. I'd have to hear that come out of his mouth, because he's sworn to uphold the Constitution. He would never say,
well,
the Constitution
I tell you what,
is just a piece of
some of the stuff he said and some of the things he did in public, I would say, of course, I never heard him saying that, but I would say he probably did say it.
Well, I think if we look at some of the policies that have come out of his administration, that all of us would agree that his administration has not been as considerate of the Constitution as most Americans would have expected, or as most Americans would have liked. And in his prosecution of this war on terrorism, I think that our Constitution and Bill of Rights has practically been shredded. Now, having said that, I'd like to say that that is the significance of what it is that we're trying to do. We're trying to say that we have new words that have come into political play in the United States, and these words are not being used to protect our country in any way, that they are not words that should be given to, a government apparatus or an organization that has a clear agenda to be used to hurt other citizens simply because of their race or because of their religion or because of their political or religious opinion, and that is exactly what happened. Now, people need to know that the person who introduced this whole idea, and it's not actually hearsay evidence, they use this term hearsay evidence now because they don't want to say secret evidence, because we had a whole campaign here in the United States several years ago to repeal the Secret Evidence Act. And the truth that came out about the Secret Evidence Act was leading to a groundswell of public opinion to have it repealed. And then we had 911, and then, of course, secret evidence got, involved in this whole we'll do anything to feel safe in national security debate, and it became now hearsay evidence. But what we're talking about is secret evidence. This idea of secret evidence was introduced to the U.S. Congress by Stephen Emerson, a journalist and a so-called terrorism expert. We haven't ever seen his credentials that made him a terrorism expert, but we do know that he is a journalist. How he found his way in front of the United States Congress to recommend that the United States would simply bury more than 200 years of judicial tradition and law to allow hearsay or secret evidence, to be lodged against people that they wouldn't even know or be able to defend themselves in a court of law. So here we have these same people that were filing the complaint again. We see now that what they have been at is exactly, the proof is there. It's not like we're creating.
Right. What do you think George Bush is going to say in the State of the Union? I think I was thinking that maybe today he was hoping that something huge would happen so he doesn't have to make this speech. What do you think he's going to tell the American people tonight?
I think that probably the president in his speech is going to focus mostly on domestic issues. I think he's probably going to try to give a Republican response to some of the issues that the Democrats have raised in their first 100-hour campaign of legislation, that he probably will want the American people to understand that Republicans share a lot of those things that the Democrats were trying to accomplish, and that these issues are not issues that are polarizing the country, that they are issues that we can all come together on, and that we did all come together on, and that's why the Democrats have had their first 100 hours have been very successful. I think in respect to foreign policy, and this is my hope, maybe this is wishful thinking, but I think that he's going to tone down some of the saber-rattling at Iran and Syria. As far as the surge is concerned, I think that he will continue to try to make the case for the surge, but I think he's also aware of the fact that he is meeting a lot of opposition out of his own party, and so I think that as issues arise in respect to the surge, that he will try to answer them, but his speech will be nothing like the speech that he just gave previously, where it seemed that he was almost sticking his finger in the eyes of Syria and Iran and challenging them, to a duel. I think we're going to see less and less of that kind of talk, and I think that things are going to be more, come across a little more cooler.
That's what you would think he should do, but of course George Bush has surprised everyone every time that he would go completely, even if he has to go it alone, he's going to go it alone. I really think that he's going to, instead of calm down his tone about the Iran and Syria, I really think he's going to even go out on a limb of inflaming the situations even more and more, and trying to present the case to the American people that what we're doing with Iran and Syria is the right thing, and which is definitely not in the interest of the Union or the citizens of the of this Union. Do you think? I'm sorry. Did we lose her?
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're there. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think, where is this thing with Iran is going to go? Do you think we're going to go to war with Iran?
No, I don't think we're going to go to war with Iran. I think that we have people close to the president who probably do want the United States to go to Iran. These are the same people that broke the policy: Benjamin Netanyahu, Richard Pearl, Douglas Feist, all of those same people that wrote the clean break strategy. It said there Iraq, Iran, and Syria had to go. So we see that they are being true to their program. Nobody is in the dark about what their program was. But I think that something happened that they haven't anticipated, and that was that China showed us that they are able to blow satellites out of the air. Now, lots of people, probably don't think that meant very much. China said that it wasn't a threat, and I agree. I don't think it was a threat, but I think it was a notice. And I think the reason I interpret it that way is because several days prior to that, Iran released a statement saying, we're ready for anything. And then the next couple of days, China blows one of its own satellites out of the air, which sends the signal that there's someone on the planet who was able to blow satellites out of the space, which means that all of the GPS systems and all of those things that were some of the advanced technology that we depend on, that it's suddenly threatened. So I think that changes the whole dialogue, the equation.
Anisa, we're going to go back to the phones. We have 4 minutes left in the program, so let's go with James on the line. Go ahead, James. James, you're on. Are you there?
Yes, I need to ask a question.
Jamie, okay, go ahead.
Okay, every time I watch this program, it seems like you're bashing the Jewish people, and it seems like you're bashing George Bush, but there are millions of people that are in the United States that will back up the Jewish people and George Bush.
Okay, now you know something? You're right if you said that I talk negatively about George Bush, but I disagree with you that on this show that we have, you see, this is exactly what Anisa is talking about, that if we talk about Israel, or if we talk about what is going on with Israel and the Jewish lobby, you take it right away, you are programmed to believe that anytime you hear criticism of Israel that you are bashing the Jewish people. No one has bashed or said anything negative about the Jewish people in the 2 hours that we had tonight. But let me ask you this. Now, by the way, you're wrong when you say there's millions and hundreds of millions or whatever you said about George Bush. I think the poll was out that 85% and in some polls 90% disagree with him. So you're wrong on that one. But tell me, how did we bash the Jewish people tonight?
Hey, it's not just tonight, because I've watched this program.
Okay, well, tell me. I mean, you called with this comment tonight, so go ahead. We only have like 2 minutes left. Tell me how we bashing them.
Okay, I'm just blown back by a lot of the programs that I watched before, and I couldn't get through.
Okay, I tell you what. That's fine. I want you to get through next time, and we'll discuss this more and more. I'm happy to receive calls like yours because that will give me the chance to talk to you one-on-one. But unfortunately, we are out of time right now. Thank you, Jamie. Okay, Anisa.
Yeah.
Is that typical reaction from people whenever you talk about Israel or the Jewish lobby that, hey, you are bashing the Jewish people? Is that a typical reaction out there?
I have to say no. I don't get a lot of that. And as I was listening to her responding to you, she was saying when you challenged her, well, what did you hear tonight? She goes, well, and then she wants to actually talk about other shows where she feels like more of that has happened. In respect to our position on this particular complaint, I think people are able to see so clearly what we're trying to say and what we're trying to do and understand that it really has nothing to do. This could be the Lilliputians. We're not saying this is happening because they're Jewish. We're saying this is happening because they have this sense of protecting Israel that maybe has reached a height of extremism where they are no longer logical. And it's not because necessarily that they're Jews. It just happens that Israel is the Jewish-only state. People are able to see clearly when we talk about constitutional rights, the rights of every American citizen, and when we make it clear that we're not trying to deprive anyone of their rights to free speech, that we're following the Supreme Court.
Unfortunately, we are completely out of time. Thank you for coming on the program, and hopefully we'll see you in other programs. And good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next.
Hi, I'm Cindy Brown. I'm representing the Louisiana Violence Prevention Alliance.